Now, those of you who see my face on YouTube, remember the camera adds 50 kilograms. Maybe not that much, but okay, that's a bad joke. Okay, so we are talking about who? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Okay, so this is showing the routes of Abraham, Isaac, and now Jacob. Where is Jacob going now? He's going from where? Haran. Why is he leaving from Haran? He's leaving from Haran because? Not his brother. He's going to his brother. He's from Laban. Okay, remember? They built a big rock somewhere right here, and they said, you don't go past this rock, this area, and I don't go past this area. So now Jacob has to go back and face Esau, right? All right, what is his relationship like with Esau? What is his relationship like with Esau? Last time he saw Esau said what? When Isaac's dead, I'm going to murder you. So it's not great, right? So why is that? Why does Esau hate Jacob?
Jacob lied. He took his
Birthright, right? Took his birthright. And that's pretty bad, right? Took his birthright, tricked him because he was really hungry. And then the second time is what? He took his blessing, right? And both times he kind of tricks his brother. So is Jacob, Esau's worse than Jacob, right? Esau's worse than Jacob. But is Jacob innocent? Not really, right? They're kind of very similar. Maybe Jacob's better, but all right. So in chapter 32, verses 1 through 2, Jacob is on his way. He's somewhere here on his way to go see Esau. On his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp," because there's angels with him, right? Jacob sees a lot of angels. So he called the name of that place Menahem, or two camps. Verses 3 through 5, Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau, his brother, in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, instructing them, "Thus you shall say to my Lord, thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants, female servants. I have sent to tell my Lord in order that I might find favor in your sight." Okay, so what is, let's look at this. Okay, Seir, this is Mount Seir. So I think this is somewhere in Jordan. Mount Seir. So this is kind of what the area looks like in Seir. Okay?
So what is the significance of Seir?
Because that's around where Jacob is right now, traveling. Yeah. So Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau, his brother, in the land of Seir. So this is Mount Seir. So likely this is what the area looks like where Jacob is. Okay. Verses 6 through 8, the messengers returned and said, "We came to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you, and there are 400 men with him." And so Jacob became greatly afraid and distressed, so he divided everything into two camps. So if Esau comes to one camp and attacks it, then the camp that is left will escape. So Esau has 400 men. So how does... Hi, Jackie. Hi, Jackie. Hi, Jackie. Okay. So Esau has 400 men. Why does that make Jacob worried? Yeah, why does it make him worried? Yeah, right? And Esau says he wants to murder him, right? And so he said he wanted to murder him, and now he's got 400 men. So what is Jacob worried about?
Being killed.
Being killed, right?
And
He said he's going to do it. Esau's the manlier one, right? Jacob's the one that is like with mama's boy who lives in tents and helps his mom cook. Esau is the manly, hairy guy who is out hunting, so very scary. And he's angry.
In which chapter are we in here?
32.
32. Okay.
So
Genesis 32.
Jacob gets very worried.
32.
Jacob gets very worried. And so he makes this prayer. Why don't we, Vidar, why don't you read verse 9?
And Jacob said, O God Almighty, Father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your kindred, that I may do you good.
Okay, next. Ms.
I am not worthy of the least of all deeds of steadfast love and all faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I have crossed this Jordan, and now I have become 2 years.
Los Judy.
Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he may come and attack me, the mothers or the children.
Okay, Johan.
But he said, I will surely do good and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude.
Multitude. So, what do you think about the prayer? What do you think about the prayer?
He has more than one wife, right?
He's got 4 wives. He's actually beating Esau. But you weren't here, so Laban tricked him, so he married Leah, but he loved Rachel. So then he married Rachel, and then the sisters were both competing on who can have the most male offspring, and they got their servants involved because Laban gave them both female servants. And then just like Abraham, the 2 women gave the female servants as wives so that they can produce more male heirs, male offspring. And they were competing with each other. And that's why he got 4 wives. Jacob doesn't go out of his way. It's not like Esau. Esau it doesn't say why, just takes 2 wives, and then he gets rejected, so he has a 3rd wife. That's not repenting, right? But Jacob is tricked. So
Yeah, he was tricked.
he was tricked by Laban, and then pressured by his 2 competitive wives, 2 competitive sisters. Gosh, to marry. Okay, so what do you think about this prayer? So what is he doing? You're saying, return to your country, to your kindred, that I may do you good. So he's reminding God of what?
What you told me.
His promises, right? He's scared. And he's got nothing. If Esau's angry, he's just going to kill him. So only chance Jacob has to be protected is God is who he says he is, and that his promises are true.
So the promise here is
Return to your country, to your kindred, that I may do you good.
that God will do.
So he's returning to his country, and okay, it looks like I'm about to get killed. Are you going to do me good? And then look at this. Look at this. I am not worthy of the least of all deeds of steadfast love and all faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. Well, he has humbled himself, hasn't he? I am not worthy of the least of all the deeds of steadfast love and all the faithfulness you have shown to your servant. Don't you think that's a lot of humility? Anyone want to elaborate? Other than yes?
I don't know. I think that's fake humility.
Really?
He's saying it to get God to protect him. Like, he's afraid. He's really, 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 really afraid.
I wonder, like, we have a near-death experience, even for the most devout atheist, I would assume something in the moment you're going to, like, cry out to God in some way, right? It's just like a human instinct. So I kind of wonder if he's so
Yeah.
And some kids later. So I think I'm 50.
Well, I think that God chastened him because he tricked Esau twice. And then he goes to his uncle, and then his uncle tricks him nonstop. So his uncle gave him a taste of his own medicine several times. So I think that kind of rubs his sin in his face. And so I think that really did humble him. It just realized, wow, what I did to Esau, I really didn't like it when Laban did that to me. So I think that really shoved his sins in his face, I think. And so that helps, and that really convicted him, I think. I could be wrong. Read into it as much as you can. It could be that he's tricking God. But I do think there's some real humility here. And so apparently the only thing he's got left, other than his wives and his sheep, the only thing he's got left is his his staff. That's the only thing he's got left, right?
Staff is a stick.
Yeah, stick. Okay. Let's see. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hands of Esau. I really think you have a lot of elements of repentance. You have humility. You have confession. I'm not worthy of what you've done for me. Please help me. Remember what you said. I mean, there's a lot of elements of true repentance here. I fear that he may come and attack me. And then here he goes. He repeats the promise, saying, I will surely do you good and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for the multitude. So he keeps going back to, remember what you said. Remember what you said. Now, is Jacob, does he deserve to be helped by God? Of course not. But God is very graceful. So we'll see. Obviously, he wants protection from Esau. Okay. So what is this right here? Who knows what this is? What? Which river? Starts with a J. Huh? Jordan. Yeah, Jordan River. So this is the Jordan River, very important river in the Bible. Of course, this is the river that they crossed when they returned from Egypt, right? So he crosses this river. That night he planned to give his brothers 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milking camels and their calves, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. So this is pretty desperate, right? I'm going to give him this amazing gift, this very gracious, this very elaborate gift. Hopefully that will make Esau not murder me. And so he plans to give these gifts in droves, drove by drove. So he has servants give them in droves. So a portion of the gifts, a portion of the gifts, a portion of the gifts. So Esau gives a small portion, and then another portion, and then another portion. And the servants in each drove are to say, the animals belong to your servant Jacob. They are a present sent to my lord Esau, and moreover, he is behind us. Jacob is hoping this will appease Esau, and Esau will accept him. Later that night, he took his big family, everything he had, and he crossed the Jabbok, which is a tributary of the Jordan. Okay, this is the Jabbok. Jabbok. It's a tributary of the Jordan River, Jabbok. Okay, so this is the most important verses that we're going to be talking about today. So let's read through that. What's going to happen next? Jacob's going to do what? Going to wrestle with who? Well, we'll talk about that. Okay, Mila, can you read verse 24, please?
And Jacob was left alone, and men wrestled.
Yeah, this is a hard word because it doesn't sound. English has these words that they add a bunch of letters for no reason. Wrestled. So you don't pronounce the T or the W. Wrestled.
Wrestled with him until the breaking of the day.
Okay, Jackie, could you read 25? Good, Jackie. Okay, Annabelle, verse 26.
Then he said, "Let me go, for the day has broken." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me."
Okay. So, who is Jacob wrestling with? Why do you think it's God? So some people think it's the devil. Do you think it's the devil or God? Of course it's God. Huh?
I never heard that one. I always heard it was God or like an angel working for God, but I've never heard
Some people say it's the devil, but yeah, I think of course it's God, because what happens here? Jacob says, "I won't let you go until you what? Bless me." So obviously the devil, he doesn't want the devil to bless him. So this is clearly God, right? Okay, so Jacob is wrestling with God. So the man, so this is probably Jesus, right? The man. So he's wrestling with God. The man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob. So he couldn't defeat Jacob. Okay, how is this? This is the question of the day. This is the question of the day. How does God wrestle with Jacob and not prevail? This is the question for the day. How does God wrestle with a man and not win? Not win. W-I-N. Win. How does God wrestle with a man and God does not win? How is that possible? What? What'd you say, Judy?
Does God want to win?
He's wrestling with him.
Yeah, does he want to win?
Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until breaking the day. Well, if you don't want to win, why are you wrestling? You could just say, let's back away. Okay, this is God created the heavens and the earth. He can just do anything he wants, and he wrestles with a man and does not win. How is that possible?
How does that question come from? From human or from God?
All right, so
Because God is God, and then the question is human acts or God acts.
So does Jacob wrestle with God throughout his life? He's not a perfect person, right? He tricks Esau, he tricks people, he's got 4 wives, he obeys his wife and sins. He lives a pretty sinful life. I mean, we all live sinful lives, right? So we all wrestle with God, right? We all wrestle with God. Most people who wrestle with God, they get overtaken and they go to hell, right? They sin against God primarily. But when we wrestle with God, we win, right? How is that possible? Well, and the way it's possible, obviously, is we have the power of Christ. We have what Christ does on the cross enables a man to, although we are unrighteous, God's, if you ever want to know how holy God is, the consequence of not having Christ is eternity in hell. And that should give you an idea of just how holy God is. And so everyone on earth is wrestling with God to some degree. But the difference is, if you have Christ, you can win. Because although God is righteous and he must destroy sin, we have Christ, we have God in us, we have the grace, we have the power of the cross, and so we win against God's righteousness. And this is a really good relationship. Jacob's name is about to change to what? What's Jacob's new name going to be? His new name is going to be what? Israel. So and then Israel does the same thing. Not only was Jacob did Jacob live a sinful life, although he was godly because of Christ. Israel was not very holy a lot of the time, right? They're wrestling with God a lot too. And sometimes God has to wound Jacob, and sometimes God has to wound Israel. It's like a chastening thing. Sometimes at least 2 or 3 times, God conquers Israel and wounds them very severely. But God just wounds them, but they prevail because of Christ, right? So the following is an excerpt from John Calvin's commentary on Genesis. Who is able to stand against an antagonist at whose breath alone all flesh perishes and vanishes away, at whose look the mountains melt, at whose words are beck the whole world is shaken to pieces. And therefore to attempt the least contest with him would be insane, but it is easy to untie the knot. For we do not fight against him except by his own power and with his own weapons. For he, having challenged us to this contest, at the same time furnishes us with the means of resistance. Of course, that's Christ. So that he both fights against us and for us at the same time. In short, such is his appointing of his conflict that while he assails us with one hand, he defends us with the other hand. Ye, inasmuch as he supplies us with more strength to resist than he employs in opposing us, we may truly and properly say that he fights against us with his left hand and for us with his right hand. For while he lightly opposes us, he supplies invincible strength whereby we overcome. Okay, let's keep reading. This is not finished yet. Okay, next was Joanna. Did you read yet?
And he said to him, what is your name? Said Jacob. And he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, for you have striven with God and with man and not with you.
Okay, Sophia.
Then Jacob asked him, please tell me your name. And he said, why is it that you ask my name? And there he blessed him.
Okay. So now Jacob, the man did touch Jacob's pocket, and the hip was pulled out of joint. Let's see here. Israel today means he strives with God. That's what Israel means. He strives with God. So Israel, as a nation, it still exists today, right? And the name today still means he strives with God. For whatever reason, when Abram's name was changed to Abraham, Moses started referring to Abraham as Abraham. But for whatever reason, when Jacob's name was changed to Israel, Moses kept referring to him as Jacob. Maybe because Israel, I don't know why that is, but maybe because Israel was, anyway. Let's keep going. Now, Jacob wants to know his name, right? Oh, sorry. Jacob wants to know his name, but God doesn't tell him, right? God doesn't say his name. It's not until Moses that God reveals his name, right? Okay, next is Mickey, verse 30.
So Jacob called him of the face, saying, for I have seen God's face to face, and with my likeness and
And Ruby, can you see it?
The sun rose up in he passed
Penuel,
you know,
limping.
nothing because of his heat.
Therefore, to this day, the people of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh that is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of the thigh. Is that the last one? Okay. So, Peniel means the face of God. He saw God's face, so it's probably Jesus, right? He saw God's face. Jacob continues to travel to Esau, now limping. In Judaism, the Gid Hanashah is the prohibition of religious Jews not to eat the sinew of the thigh. Sinew of the thigh. Now, the sinew of the thigh is either the ligament or muscle, but religious Jews, they don't eat it because of this. Okay, next chapter. So, when Jacob saw Esau with his 400 men, he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the 2 female servants. He put the servants with the children in front, then Leah with her children, and last he had Rachel and Joseph. So the last one, the very last, so he puts them into groups. So the servants are out in front, and then who's in the middle? Leah, right? Does Jacob love Leah like he loves Rachel? No. So Rachel is the very last. So he's protecting the one he truly loves at the very last. Leah is probably going to meet Esau, and she's just shaking her head the whole way, you know. And then Rachel and Joseph. And Joseph, of course, we'll be talking about him later. And so Jacob clearly still loves Rachel the most. Okay. He himself went on before them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near his brother. But Esau ran to meet him. Listen to this. Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. So what happened? What happened when Esau? What did Esau do when he met Jacob? He ran to meet him, embraced him, fell on his neck, and kissed him. What does that mean? Yeah, very much. Over the top forgiveness. Really missed him, right? Come on. What do you think? Who does that remind you of in the Bible, in the New Testament? The prodigal son. Whoa, someone brought their Bible today. So, well, it's in here. It's in here and it's in here, right? So that reminds you, to me, it reminds me of the father of the prodigal son, and he runs out and embraces the son. That's what. And the miraculous thing here is Esau godly? No. This has nothing to do with God. This has nothing to do with fear of God. Esau is not a godly man. This is just, I miss my brother. And this is just a miracle. This is God. God just made a miracle. An ungodly brother who is threatened to murder him, who Jacob betrayed several times. And then this is a miracle that Esau just completely forgives him and just loves him. And this is better than they've ever had before, right? Because they were fighting each other in the womb, right? What was it, Rebecca? Rebecca was praying to God and saying, why are my babies fighting each other in my belly? These brothers had a sibling rivalry that was intense. And this is probably the most they've ever loved each other, maybe. Jacob, or Israel, we're going to call him Jacob because Moses keeps calling him Jacob, clearly changed by the way he talks. He refers to his children as the children whom God has graciously given your servant. So Jacob is so humble at this point. He talks to Esau as, he refers to himself as the servant, right? Very humble. The family all bow when they meet Esau. Esau tells Jacob that all the gifts that Jacob gave him were not necessary. But Jacob insists Esau takes all the gifts. And he said, no, please, if I found favor in your sight, then accept my present from my hand. For I have seen, listen to this, for I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God, and you have accepted me. What do you think about that? So Jacob just saw probably Jesus, but still God, right? Jacob just saw God's face when he wrestled the man, right? And now he tells his brother Esau, Esau's not a godly man, but he says seeing Esau face to face is like seeing the face of God. What do you think about that? What do you think about seeing Esau's face is like seeing the face of God? What do you think?
I think God made Esau merciful.
Right. And Esau was kind of like a servant was made a servant for God in a way, right? So by Esau forgiving Jacob, it was kind of like God forgiving Jacob, right? So you have to know this about God. You cannot see God as just love and grace and mercy. You can't see God just like that without the righteousness. You can't see God as just wrath and righteous and judgmental. You can't judgment. You can't see that and not the grace. You've got to see God as both, right? Before you get the full picture of God. And this is a good picture of God. Jacob is about to get obliterated, and then he gets mercy. And then Jacob sees Esau, and it's like seeing the face of God. It's like he deserves to get wiped out because of his sin, right? And he gets the grace instead. And it's such a great story. Anyway. Okay, so finally Esau does give in and accept Jacob's gift. Esau wants to journey with Jacob, but Jacob says that that the children and the young flocks are frail, and if they're driven too hard, they might die. Jacob will travel slower and meet Esau at Seir. Esau offers to give Jacob some of his people, but Jacob says it's not necessary. Actually, Jacob is kind of tricking Esau in a way because he actually plans to travel to a different location. Jacob instead journeys to Succoth and built himself a house and made booths for his livestock. Therefore, the name of the place is called Succoth, or booths. And next, Jacob came to a city of Nechechim in Canaan, and he camped. Nechechim is probably the modern-day city of Tel Balata. Tel Balata. And so these are some ancient ruins. This is probably that location of Tel Balata. Sekechim. Anyway. And from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he brought for 100 pieces of money the piece of land on which he had pitched his tent. There he erected an altar and called it El Halohi, Israel, or the God of Israel. The God of Israel. And that's it for today. Discussion? Any discussion? Huh? Do you have any questions? Yes.
Jacob wrestling with God reminds me of when the pagan woman was dating Jesus and he was with her daughter, and she said something like, "Even dogs eat the crumbs that fall on the table." And then she prevailed. I think that.
Yeah, you do see that. You do see that contrast. You see that contrast, and it's always good to see that contrast. And I'm from America, and in America, we always talk about God is so loving, God is so gracious, and if you forget God's righteousness and God's wrath and hell and these things, the grace and the mercy and the love doesn't really. You lose sight of that.
I think she's talking about the Gentile who asked for food as a Gentile dog from Jesus.
Yeah.
When
Yeah, it was the
her daughter
Yeah, that was Can. That was a Canaanite, right?
This Canaanite woman who asked for his daughter to be healed.
But that
For Jesus, and Jesus at first said, "No, I don't give my food to Gentile dogs." And then she said, "But even dogs should get some crumbs that falls off the table."
yeah. Well,
But wait, she is wrestling with God.
I think we're all wrestling with God. I think we're all wrestling with God, whether we admit it or not, because none of us are righteous, and we all wrestle with God. And the Christian wins the wrestling match because we have Christ. God is wrestling with us because He's got a righteous side. He's got a side. God has a side that wants to obliterate every Christian because we're unrighteous, and the only thing that protects us is the righteousness of Christ. And I agree with that. And with the Canaanite lady, obviously God told the Israelites. He told when Joshua was to conquer this land, he said, exterminate everyone, including every person. Exterminate the Canaanites. Because they don't want them to teach them their ways, their paganism, their sinful ways. Exterminate them. And so obviously they didn't do that because Jesus talked to a Canaanite, and Jesus confirms, yeah, you're a Canaanite. But I think she has humility, and so she says, yes, but even dogs get food. So she has that humility. She accepts, yes, my people are a threat to be executed by God. But remember, God does not execute the Canaanite woman. Jesus does not execute. Jesus doesn't say, you're a Canaanite? Let me finish what Joshua should have done, I think he said, didn't he say, great is your faith? I think he complimented her. So she actually got more praise from Jesus than a lot of the Jews did. So, anyway, yeah, and I think we're all wrestling with God to one degree. I think we're all wrestling with God, and if we didn't have Christ, we would be overcome immediately because it's only through Christ that we can stand that wrestling match. Okay, any more questions? Yeah, how do we wrestle with God? How do we wrestle with God?
Or do you mean like aside from disobedience, like positive wrestling?
Both. Like, so how do we wrestle with God?
When I asked that question, I was thinking more about David's song. Like in David's song, he wrestled with God. Like sometimes he sees some injustice and he gets really angry and he tells God, "Why does this happen? Why? And then he said, "Oh, but I remember your goodness." And then he started praising God. Or sometimes he started off with being depressed, and then he told his soul, "Why are you so downcast, oh my soul? You should, believe in God and stop remember the old times. Remember God is a faithful God." Something like that, and then like eventually.
But I also think about like in the New Testament, that Paul was saying, the thing I want to do in the Roman 8, and the thing I want to do I cannot do, but the thing I won't do I do it.
Right.
Because of the flesh. And in the Paul, he write a lot of David, it's not a contract, it's like we follow for the spirit or we follow by the desire. So actually all the time I think we're resting with our flesh.
Yeah.
Emotion and desire, so not follow for the Holy Spirit.
And yeah.
Our flesh and spirit fight.
Yes. So that's why we need Jesus, the Holy Spirit, to help us, to guide us the way to follow Jesus, the Holy Spirit. But in the world, we are living this fallen world, so we always have emotion, always have that. So it's a fighting thing that way. So it's just recognize the emotion, just like we have the class that a lot of knowledge by head, but this emotion and feeling are important.
Yeah, now, Ruby, I think you're talking about wrestling with the flesh. Like when you wrestle with the flesh, I think that's different. Like, I think we do wrestle with the flesh, and you're right about that. And in a way, in a way, you are wrestling with God because you're. Yeah, I agree with you that you're kind of wrestling with God, but then you're. I mean, I think those are wrestling with God. But I think what's happening, because remember with Jacob, he's sort of he needs forgiveness because he ruined his brother's life in several ways, and he needs forgiveness because his brother is very manly and he's got all these men. He's going to kill him, and so he's wrestling with God. He's praying, and then he says, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. And he's not saying, I'm.
He's human too. That time he had emotions too. He had a feeling, his beauty, everything. He got a feeling too. He's a human.
Yeah.
And only one righteousness is Jesus. We cannot say right or wrong. Even I say anything, I can make a mistake too. But when Jesus was right.
Yeah. And so, I think he's wrestling with God because Jacob is not righteous. I mean, Jacob is not righteous, and so wrestling with God,
He's human being.
But the difference is he wrestles. The only difference is everyone in this world is wrestling with God or will wrestle with God. But the difference between the Christian and the non-Christian is the Christian wins. Because the Christian wrestles with God, and they've got the weapon of the cross, the weapon of the blood of Christ. And so they win because the cross destroys the righteous demand for justice.
Yeah, but Jesus comes for the sinner, not come for someone healthy. So Christian and non-Christian both sinner. And God wants us to save for the sick. For the people not Christian, at least they're not healthy. But for we are Christian, we have to be careful not to self-righteousness. So to distinguish that, if Jesus come to saving sick and not for health, not for someone healthy.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. All right, anything else? Anything else? Because the next step is prayer.
So I think we discussed how we wrestle with God. Sometimes we wrestle with our sin, our flesh.
Yeah, I think it's Christian and not Christian we're all resting, but because Christian we have the Jesus. He's like the truth, the way, the free, the love. That we resting, not because we want to win, because we stay by grace. We don't want to win, but it's just because God's grace.
Does it include wrestling with God? God, you should bless me. I don't see it. Do we do that sometimes? God, you should bless me. How come I'm in this dire situation?
I would just share with Matt today. I was saying, I was just inspiring. Like I hear something, some pastor was talking about. He said, we pray or something like the rest of God will not answer my prayer because I have subject. But why you not follow me to the answer my prayer? But he was saying, I think that remind me actually the time is God is authority. It's like a pandemic. He's still in control. But maybe it's not in our way to see the
Yeah.
results.
So
But
that's so
actually God was changing his meaning. It transformed myself. Transform myself, my way to see maybe more like him or more like Jesus. Actually, he was little by little to change myself for that way.
I agree.
And that kind of resting actually is like what he said, I'm resting with myself.
So, part of it, when we pray, God changes us, changes our desires, so that our desires are more aligned with Him. And then, another thing is, although we pray for this, God doesn't have to do it that way. He can give us something way better than what He says way, because, whatever His will is best, right? But I think sometimes we feel like God is not listening to us because we want something and God doesn't give it to us right away. Yeah, I think.
But I think a major problem is, we need to remember that, you know, the heart, Jeremiah says the heart is deceitful above all things. And so, I mean, that's a pretty strong statement, and desperately sick. So the heart is desperately sick above all things. Your heart is more deceitful than all things. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. And so, a major problem that we have is aligning our hearts to the will of God is unimaginably difficult. What are you going to pray right now? What do you want to pray? I want to pray that I make lots of money, and that I'm rich, and that I'm perfectly healthy, and this and this and this and this. I mean, what should we be praying for? I pray that that the church is pure. I pray that for the earth, the Taiwanese church will be exactly. Jesus even tells us this is how you to pray, and we still don't pray that way.
Yeah, but I think God's so mercy because Jesus teaches us how to pray. But before we make Jesus, we don't know how to pray, and then we can cry out loud too. So, I mean, I'm not praying for righteousness. Before I met God, I not even know that's a prayer. I was angry. I would do a lot of things, but I think it's also prayer. But this is everyone's relationship with God is different. But in the end, when we make God, and Jesus will teach us how to pray. But when we are really bad, really, really down, really emotional struggle, it was so real. You can still talk to God. The thing I don't want to do, I do it.
Right.
I want to pray like God's way to do, but at that time I was so bad. And my
Yeah.
emotions so strong.
In the end, I think Jacob at the end, he realizes, you can see from his prayer, Ruby, you make a good point, and he says, where is it in his prayer? He says, I am not worthy of the least of all the deeds. It's kind of like the prodigal son, and he goes back and he says, well, I'll just, I'll help my father feed the pigs just to get something to eat. It takes that unbelievable humility. I mean, that shows us, when we repent, when we turn back to God, part of it is humility. And I am not worthy of the least of all the deeds of steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have already shown to your servant. And so he crosses the Jordan, he says, with only a staff, and he's saying, I'm not worthy of all the love that you've already given me. And that's the humility that you need. And then Ruby talks about Romans 7 when the war against the flesh, and that war against the flesh is real. I'm sorry to tell you, your greatest enemy in this room is this right here. See, that's your biggest enemy. It's not the person to your left, not the person to your right. It's not the enemy. It is your biggest enemy is your heart, and you cannot control your own heart. You can't do it. It is going to wander in a direction you don't want it to go that fast. And you wake up in the morning, and what do you think? Do you think, let me worship God in a holy way? How long do you think you can be perfectly holy, in a holy state, according to God's level of righteousness? Even 1 second, 3 seconds. Now, what happens is you get used to it. You get born again, and then you sort of you feel really bad, but because you still sin, and you still sin, you get angry, you still sin, and you just kind of get used to it. And then you see other Christians who do the same thing, and so it becomes normal. You kind of normalize it. But of course, God doesn't have any of these sins ever. And so, that's the greatest enemy you have is your own heart. And you are going to be, until the day that you die, you are going to be at war with your own heart. And that's what Paul's talking about. My mind, it says, yes, the law of God is good, but that's exactly what I want to do. The heart does what it wants to do. And so, yeah, the heart likes what it wants. And a lot of times what the heart wants is sin. Okay. Anything else?
I feel like sometimes wrestling is not like, for me, there's a part like, oh yeah, you pray, you want something. But sometimes it's like, okay, I have this question that I really don't understand, and I feel like it doesn't make sense to me. Like, sometimes read the verse in the Bible, and I'm like, I'm not buying this, or like, I'm not convinced. I don't think, like maybe because of my upbringing or my cultural values, whatever. Like, I look at it like, no. Like this morning, a pastor sermon, like we're talking about divorce, marriage. Oh, like I struggle, like I'm still struggling, like with the gender issues a lot, and then I think that's like it has been my intellectual like wrestle with God for a long time, but then I feel like
Gender issue, is that like egalitarian versus complementarian? Is that what it is? Okay.
as a cynical, jaded, man-hating feminist, I have no struggle with it. But anyway, but I feel like I take it very seriously, so I wrestle with it, like I wrestle with God about that. And I feel like every time I go look for answer, I read more, I listen to more, it's like a little like, ding, okay, that part, I get it now. But there's still this part, I don't get it. And then
All right.
like as my journey continues, I feel like I understand the teaching in the Bible makes more sense to me, and my own thinking is like I feel like I'm leaving it behind.
Right.
Because I'm like slowly, it's a long process.
And yeah, and
It's
it
not like, oh God, like I want this. No, it's like I don't understand why it is this way, because this is the reality I see, and this is how you're teaching me.
right.
No, it's not gonna work that way. The pastor says this morning in one passage, one verse, man should leave his family to parents,
Right.
mother and father. And like for a long time, it's like I just read about that last night, and then this it was beautiful because I never thought about like in the Bible it says man should leave the comfort zone, like his comfort zone, his family, to be united with a woman. But God never asked the woman to leave like her family to go be with a man. It's like because God says this helper is so valuable. She deserves a man giving up everything for her. It's like I feel like because my culture is very like not respecting women, and then the Bible culture is very like restoring women's
Right.
self-esteem. Like this is my value as a woman. It's very, very powerful.
And we've got several books of the Bible: Ruth, Esther, Old Testament.
Yeah. So I feel like when I wrestle with God about like issues like that, like I feel like I start to see because of my own like bad upbringing, like really colors how I see, how I read Bible every time, and it's not right. It's not what God wants me to see. So like it's a really long process that
Yeah, and it's a long process. And I guarantee that, and don't think of it in terms of ability. Don't think like a woman is unable to be a pastor, because women. It's not an ability thing. It's not like women they're not smart enough to be able to do it. That has absolutely nothing to do with it. And we all have that. We all have things. We all have verses. Every single one in here, there are 2 or 3 things in the Bible that we hate, and we want to change that verse, twist it any way in the world. We would love to it, and we hate the fact that it's there, and we've actually got to change our hearts and not the scripture, and we've all got that issue.
You know what? I feel it just very, very beginning. It's just like God talking about. I think not even her. It's a rebellion. It's like God says something, but we know Bible. Everything is from God. It's true, but it's really like a rebellion because we don't want to trust everything. Not only you, but I mean beginning to read the Bible. It's so many things are like that. But it's just like Jesus keeps talking about if the 99 sheep in the
Right.
It's like human nature. It's
Right.
just not because I feel human nature. It's just we want to do whatever we can control because I want to control the situation. Not
Right.
because it's a woman or man, because we want to control the situation.
Eh.
So that's the thing. It's like we want to be our own God. It's
Right.
a little bit God. It's beginning of the Bible from Genesis to the Revelation. You can see that the human way. It's just no human way.
Right. I agree.
Human
Agree.
rebellion things. Not even men, but I think men and women the same.
And if you want to know how sinful you are, if you want to know how sinful you are, get married. Get married, and then you will have a very good idea. It's a sanctifying thing because you have to. It's like a mirror. I've heard getting married is like a mirror for your sin. So you wake up in the morning, you see yourself, you see how handsome or beautiful you are. And getting married, it shows you how sinful you are, like all the time. And so you actually become better through the experience. You become a holier person, but part of that is just you're being revealed. Like when you're alone in your apartment and no one's there, no one's there to see,
But I think that, like, normally single people in our culture, we still live with our family. So there's still this.
I didn't.
Agree.
I didn't live with
Yeah, so I think.
when you get married, you become a driver. You're not in the back seat anymore. And so when you're the driver, you've got to know the directions, and you have to have it's responsibility, right? So when you're now you're the head of a family, and now I thought we were one flesh. Oh. I thought we were one flesh, but now I'm starting to doubt that.
I think the argument for complementarianism is really like, do you see church as a business or do you see church as a family? If the church is a family, the head of the family is the business.
Ladies, you're going to love complementarianism because it means we give women lots of compliments.
Yeah, but if we see church as a company, then of course anybody can be gifted, right? But if the church is a family, then we need to look at how the family model is in the Bible. Head is the husband, the wife's the mistress.
And feminism is nothing new. John Knox, the founder of Presbyterianism, he fought his entire life, he fought against 3 women named Mary. And he actually wrote a book against the women that he was fighting against. One of them was Bloody Mary. That was a pretty ferocious fight, but the other ones were much nicer. But they're all Catholic. But yeah. That's it. Okay, prayer time.